New from Castle Creations, the Mamba Micro X2. You may have seen on the social medias, Castle just released the Mamba Micro X2. It's this little guy right here. And me being me, I'm interested in this for crawling. And full disclosure, I did help them in the prototype phase of this. So we tested them out with as many different motors as we possibly could, and it worked really well, what you would expect from a Micro X. However, the X2 has some extra features for you. This one goes up to 4-cell LiPo, so it is 2 to 4S capable. And they know the rock crawling community very well. A lot of guys run 3S, but 4S is also very popular. So glad to see them upping their voltage a little bit on there. It also comes with the rock crawler version that we will be carrying, part number, let's see, what is it? 010071-00, maybe there's a few more O's in there. This one with the 4mm bullets. It is made for crawlers specifically. They recommend the slate motor with 27 or 2850 kV and less, or a Polar Pro stubby in the 2700 kV or lower. I'm going to go a little bit further and tell you, if you're running 3-cell LiPo, I'd recommend you stop at 1800 kV for the revolvers. And if you're running 4-cell LiPo, you should probably stop at 1400 kV for the revolvers. Now, not to say that you couldn't get away with a little more. If you're running, say, a stubby revolver, you could probably put the 2250 kV on there for 3-cell LiPo, and you'd be perfectly fine. But just warning you, it is a micro ESC, so a lot of that has to do with the heat of your environment, your terrain that you're crawling on, the gearing of your vehicle, the weight of your vehicle, as well as how you personally drive. So your mileage will vary on that, but we do have the recommendations on our website, or we'll get it up there as quickly as we can. Notable features on this: they do include data logging. They also have the auxiliary wire if you are into having your drag brake changing on the fly. This is also a sensored ESC. Of course, you can also use it sensorless, but it is sensored. It works extremely well with our 4 poles. It works extremely well with Castle's 4 poles, probably with Tekin's 4 poles, and most other 4 poles out there. But of course, you know, I kind of like the Polar Pros. They're real smooth. So I'm going to recommend those. Let's see what else on here. This is my personal one that I used for the prototyping. I actually desoldered directly from the board. They've got these little solder cups that are built into them, so you can change these wires out fairly easily. I changed out the power wires for one of my personal units that has the JST plug already integrated, as well as an XT60 connector. I did more testing without the sensor wire, so the sensor wire is pulled off, but this is the same sensor wire that you would find on any of the other Micro X products. And I also cut off the on-off plug. Right there, I chopped the on-off switch off and then just hardwired it together, so when I plug in my personal unit, it is turned on. I really don't like on-off switches. They're never going to be a feature on my own personal products, and it's not really a big deal to just clip them off on there. So recommendations on what you would use this in for this Micro X2 is going to be basically any single speed rock crawler. So no TRX4 with a 2-speed, but the single speed is totally fine. And otherwise, any other crawling vehicle. So SEX10, SEX10-2, SEX10-3, definitely Element Enduro. Really, really good match for the Element Enduro. Let's just kind of take a look around. What else do I got here? Wraith 1.9, definitely. Like I said, TRX4 Sport, definitely. If you wanted to throw these into one of these scale Jeeps that I can't remember the Rock Hobby name of right now, the 1940s Jeep, you could throw it into one of those. Comp Truck Twin TF2, TF3, definitely good fit for those. Although the 2-speed on that, you know, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I would say you would have to be very careful in your second gear or use a really low kV motor. Honestly, like a 1400 kV or 15, you know, a really low kV choice with low enough gearing, you're probably going to be fine because it's a small vehicle. So yeah, your mileage will vary. Be careful in the TF3 and TF2 with 2-speed. Oh, let's see, definitely comp rigs. Oh yeah, definitely comp rigs. If you're wanting to build something like this, a cheater rig, an LCG, low center of gravity rig, you can definitely work it in there. This one has a, let's see, 6-pole, well, this is actually a prototype, 2700 kV. This was our 6-shooter. You could use these with a Crawlmaster. I mean, you can really use it on about anything. The 10-pole Crawlmaster motors, 2700 kV on 3S, totally fine. The 1800 on 4-cell, totally fine. So the question that you probably have, does this model have the Castle startup sound? Yes, it does. So any motor that you use it with, in particular sensorless, you're gonna hear that Castle whine from it, so keep that in mind. But if you're using something that's an in-runner, pretty quiet, honestly. You're not gonna really hear it much, so if you do pair it with something like the Crawlmaster 10-pole, sensorless in-runner, being an in-runner of relatively small diameter for the pole count, it's not gonna be very noisy. I wouldn't even worry about the noise generation on there. If you're using a revolver, yeah, it's gonna, you know, ooey, ooey. You have actually seen me crawling this a whole bunch on the rocks outside this past year. I never told you that I was doing it, but just to let you know, I've been using it. It's a really nice ESC. Let's do some quick comparisons before we get out of here. This is compared to the Crawlmaster V1. As you can see, it's a really close footprint, about the same length. The V1 is smaller because it has no case, but there you go on that. Of course, also another micro ESC. Next to the BRXL, almost the same length, definitely thinner in width there, about the same height overall, but still smaller than this brushed ESC. We compare it to the 1080 from Hobbywing. It's a little bit longer in this direction, just a teeny bit taller, although you could potentially take off this plastic molding on top. Let's see, about the same width. Yeah, right about the same width as the 1080. So a small ESC, obviously. And then compared to the full size Mamba Mamba X, you can see the X is just a huge chunk of ESC. I have the fan taken off of this, but even so, the X is larger, it's longer, it's wider, it's just a much bigger ESC. However, the X, it'll take anything that you throw at it. So if you're doing something that's a single speed rig, the Micro X all day long, absolutely. If you're looking for something with a 2-speed, then I would say you probably want to bump up to the regular X version or even the Copperhead version. Those are going to handle your 2-speed a whole lot better. If you want any sort of like rock racing, hill climbing, those sort of things, you definitely want to go with a bigger ESC and not the Micro. Although in a tow rig with like a 1000 kV motor, something really slow, 1200 kV motor, I think you'd be fine with this guy. The really low kVs produce much less heat in the ESC. I know we've talked about this before, but your torque is generated from amps, and the amount of amps determine your heat by the square of the amps. So if we go from 1 amp to 2 amp, 1 squared is 1 unit of heat, 2 squared is 4 units of heat. So when you double your amp needs, you actually add 4 times the heat into your system. Now, said another way, if I go from a 1000 kV motor to a 2000 kV motor using this Micro, we're gonna have 4 times the amount of heat for any torque generated at the shaft of the motor if we use the higher kV motor. So I'm kind of getting in depth on this, but just to warn you, with a Micro ESC like this, if you know you're gonna be putting a big load on it, a big torque load, you are much better off using a lower kV motor with higher voltage than doing it the other way around. So low kV, all good. All good. I've been extremely impressed with it. I can definitely give 2 thumbs up for this product. I appreciate that Castle let me in on the prototyping phase, as they usually do with a lot of ESCs. I didn't catch anything that needed improving on this, which was awesome. I just basically tested it on our motors, gave them feedback on there, you know, some heat, you know, some gearing recommendations, some motor recommendations as far as kV ranges and stuff like that, and they listened, and that is awesome. That is simply awesome. If you do have any more questions about this, leave your comments down below. I will do my best to get to them, but otherwise, you can find them on our website. I'm sure A-Main has them. Castle has them up on the website currently with a small back order time, but in general, you're gonna be finding these all over just as any other Castle product would, and I can highly recommend them. So as always, thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.